Author Chris Bohjalian of Weybridge is celebrating a big milestone, the release of his 25th novel. It's called The Jackal's Mistress and is set during the Civil War. Bohjalian recently stopped by our studio to talk about the book and reflect on his career. 25 novels? What an accomplishment.
Thank you. Thank you.
How do you keep up that pace?
The last 5 years have been a dumpster fire for much of the world, a pandemic, not great, but it's been unbelievably productive and inspiring for artists, including me. Since the lockdown began in March of 2020, I finished Hour of the Witch, I wrote The Lioness, I wrote The Princess of Las Vegas, I wrote The Jackal's Mistress, I wrote the play The Club, plus some magazine work and newspaper work. Keeping up the pace has gotten really easy as I've gotten older because I have such unbelievable muscle memory.
The 25th novel, The Jackal's Mistress, has roots right here in Vermont. Tell me about that.
The Jackal's Mistress is a Civil War Romeo and Juliet about a Vermonter and a Virginian based on a dangerous true story. In 1864, in September, Henry Bedell, a member of the Vermont Brigade, had most of his leg and one of his hands blown off in a battle leading up to the Third Battle of Winchester. After what was left of the leg was amputated, he was left to die what Drew Gilpin Faust would have called the good death. But he surprised everyone. Days later, he was still alive, and he was found by a rebel woman and two formerly enslaved people who still live with her on her property. And she made a decision. A dangerous, treasonous decision, but wonderful, wonderful in terms of her moral compass. I'm going to keep this Yankee blue belly alive because I would want a Yankee woman, coarse as she might be, to keep my husband alive in a similar situation. I should be really clear that the true story we know very little about. It's 6 pages in this little book from 1869 by Aldous Walker, Middlebury College's valedictorian class of 1862, who, because being an officer in either army was so dangerous, was a lieutenant colonel by 1865. So the book is inspired by this snippet of history, 6 pages in Aldous Walker's book, but it's not that story. I wanted to write something bigger, something more epic, something that might be a love story.
You have seen so much change in publishing in your career. You know, for your first novel, the rise of electronic mechanisms for reading books, of audiobooks, you know, that was maybe just in its very early stages then.
First of all, I think we still have a totemic connection to books made of paper. For example, this 1869 book, I love it because it's been around for practically 57 years. And I love to touch it, I love the way it smells. I still have my mother's first edition of Ernest Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea. I don't have the dust jacket because when I was a little boy, I drew the Starship Enterprise into the sky above the Caribbean. I wish I had that even more than I have the first edition of the book. But I love having that book because there is my mother's name inscribed on a book plate on the inside in her penmanship. Also, you mentioned audiobooks. Audiobooks are huge now, and they're wonderful, and I love them. And if anyone ever says to me, oh, listening to books doesn't count, I will immediately push back and say, it does. I listened in 2024 to one more audiobook than books that I read of paper. And the reason for that is because of the technology you were referring to. All of a sudden, you can access virtually any audiobook. 25 years ago, the only audiobooks you could listen to were the books that were recently put on disc or tape, hence the term books on tape. And bookstores could only allocate so much space to books on tape.
In the passage of time, have you found that books that you wrote earlier in your career have new reasons for being today? I think particularly about maybe like Transistor Radio. There's a transgender character in that. Might that book be read differently in 2025 than in the year that it was published?
In the year that Transistor Radio was published, which was the year 2000, I had booksellers tell me that I had lost my mind, that this was a book that no one wanted to read. And I usually explain to them, well, I wrote it because I think it's an important topic and I think it's a beautiful love story. And if people find it, that's great, and I hope they will discover it. And I will tell you that I've had so many readers over the last quarter century tell me that it was their first exposure to that community, and that all of a sudden they understood that community better. So I'm really proud of that book. I don't know if I would write that book today, because as a cis male of a certain age, I would much rather that trans stories were told by trans voices. But when Transistor Radio came out in the year 2000, it was so revolutionary that I was actually on the cover of Transgender Tapestry, the only magazine in existence at the time for that part of the trans community.
Interesting. Are you already working on novel number 26?
It's done.
Oh, my goodness.
We're on the far side of the pandemic. I mean, I'm telling you, we are in the midst of a literary renaissance, not because of me, but because of so many people that are so inspired and writing so much. Yes, my 2026 book is done. You will see it in August of 2026. It is called The Amateur. It is set between 1978 and 1980 in New England and a suburb of New York City. It's about an 18-year-old golfing superstar who has the LPGA in her sights, and she's going to make it until just before she leaves for college. She drives a golf ball through the practice net at her Tony Country Club, killing one of her classmates, a caddy, by bonking him on the forehead and completely derailing her life.
You are a time traveler when it comes to your books.
I do like to travel around, you're right. And going from 1864 in the Civil War to my adolescence was really fun and I think cathartic and important.
Well, I hope you'll come back next year to talk about your next book.
In a heartbeat, Jack, I'm so grateful to you for all that you do to celebrate what stories can mean to the soul.
And Bohjalian said he just loves diving into research and meeting really interesting people in the process. For The Jackal's Mistress, he says he spoke extensively with Civil War historians and with medical historians.